Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about the most common dietary source of pain. And I have been seeing this for many years. Okay. Many years. I've been teaching this for many years, and I have seen it over and over and over and over again. And I want to try to keep this brief so we have plenty of time for the guest speaker to regale you with great wisdom and encouragement and excellent things. So I won't go into lots and lots and lots of details. I will share a couple of brief stories throughout these slides, though, just to reinforce to you that I'm intimately aware of how much this can impact your body, your pain, and your health. Okay? Remember, being an informed healthcare consumer means you will make better choices and have improved outcomes, right? Again, this information is not intended. I'm trying to move these things out of the way for you. It is for educational purposes only. I'm not diagnosing or treating any medical or health-related conditions. It's not a substitute for medical advice or treatment. Do not disregard any medical advice or delay treatment because of information in this presentation. You want to discuss your diet with your healthcare provider prior to making any changes. However, do know that your healthcare provider may have no nutrition knowledge whatsoever, or the knowledge that they do have may be very opinionated based on some things they've read, but not true education. And I am holding myself in no way liable for any effects or consequences on the basis of this information because it is educational purpose only. Okay? All right. We are going to talk about dairy, disease, and pain. Specifically, the dairy myth, the calcium paradox. Because what happens when you tell people you don't consume dairy? Everybody wants to know where you're getting your calcium. Well, I will tell you a very simple answer to that. The same place the cows get it. They don't make calcium, they eat calcium, and then it's passed along in their milk. You can eat calcium too. You don't have to consume it in dairy. Okay, now the presentation's over. Just kidding. Okay, so dairy and disease. Diet is linked to a bacteria that causes irritable bowel disease. Now, we're not talking irritable bowel syndrome here, IBS, which is just lots of discomfort, gas, bloating, maybe some diarrhea, maybe some constipation. I had somebody call that constaria one time. You never knew which you were going to get. Irritable bowel disease, whole nother story. We're talking Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, very serious issues, okay? And what they found was the animal-based diet had an 8-fold increase in the gut population of a bacterium that may cause inflammatory bowel disease. Now, this is all, research is ongoing, right? I love the name, Bilophila wadsworthia. Who says scientists don't have a sense of humor? All right, growth of this bacterium may be stimulated by the digestion of dairy products. This is what they're seeing. In contrast, the gut population of this particular bacteria fell 3-fold in the plant-based diet group. So those not consuming these foods saw an improvement in their gut population. Dairy and breast cancer. Estrogen, even in very tiny amounts, can increase tumor growth. All milk products contain estrogen. It does not matter what it is. If it's an animal that's producing the milk, it is going to have estrogen because they're hormonal, because they've given birth, and that's why they're producing the milk. And so this will absolutely, oh, we have Jay with us. Let me go ahead and put that there. Okay, perfect. All right, all milk products contain estrogen. All right, the health professionals follow-up study. Dairy and prostate cancer. Men who consume more than 2 servings a day of cow's milk products have a 60% increased risk of cancer as compared to men who consume no cow's milk. More than 80% of the milk was low fat or no fat. So very important for you to know it. It's not the fat in the milk that's doing it. It's the dairy protein. Okay, arthritis facts. Everyone thinks that, oh my gosh, when you get older, you're going to have arthritis, right? CDC tells us that half the population develops degenerative joint disease or osteoarthritis. So, you guys just flip a coin, you're going to get it. Well, I want to tell you it's not genetic. Yes, you may have a parent, a grandparent, a great-grandparent, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody struggling with arthritis. It is not your genes. It is the food that switches the genes on or off. And again, I have to try to minimize these teachings, and I could go on for days. I promise you I won't. but it is not a rite of passage as you age. I have had people take my classes and they were in their 80s with a history of osteoarthritis. And when they follow what was advised, their pain resolved. Okay. Now, animal products will increase something called intestinal permeability. It's the simple term is leaky gut. And dietary fat also has a toxic effect on the intestine. So you will end up having harm occur to your GI tract, right? NSAIDs also increase intestinal permeability. So that is called leaky gut. Oh, Michelle is telling me the slides are not advancing. It's showing the disclaimer slide. Well, that doesn't make sense to me. Okay, let me stop share. And now I will share again. And now I've done slides many times on Facebook and the slides moved forward. So let me wait a moment. We've got that 20-second delay here. And let me see. It should change. And I don't know what's happening between Facebook and Zoom. And I apologize for this. All right. Hopefully the slides will continue to move forward. I'll try to pay attention on my other screen here to see that happen. So intestinal permeability, leaky gut, those food proteins, usually animal proteins, will enter the bloodstream through a leaky gut, right? There are gaps. Okay. And making sure Michelle, okay, yep, she's telling me you can see the slides now. So you have this antibody antigen complex that occurs because these foods end up in the bloodstream and your immune system says red alert, red alert. These things aren't supposed to be in the bloodstream. They don't belong here. So your immune system starts to attack those things. You end up creating this antibody antigen complex, and that can get stuck in your skin, your joints, your kidneys, you know, wherever throughout the body. The antibodies are made that also attack your own tissues. It's called molecular mimicry. So if that food protein that was in your bloodstream looks anything like a cell in your body, your immune system goes around making sure it didn't miss any of the invaders. And if it sees a cell in the body that looks similar, it gets a little confused and thinks, oh, I missed some, and it starts to attack you. That's pretty much the premise of autoimmune disorders, when your body's attacking you. And this is, you know, what the data is showing, that this is the potential reason that occurs. So I wanted you to see this. This is some of the work from Colin Campbell. This is dietary protein and AFB1 induced liver cancer in rats. Now, I go into great detail of this, not too much detail as far as science is concerned. I don't want people's eyes to glaze over. I don't expect you all to be, you know, microbiologists or things like that, but I do explain the basics. And so what happened in his study was he looked at dietary protein percentage with these animals. And he looked to see those who got a 20% protein, the calories in their food was 20% protein, which was considered a regular diet. 30 out of 30 of those animals, or 100% of them, developed the cancer. When he fed them a 5% low protein diet, right, only 5% of the calories were from protein, none of them, 0%, developed the cancer. So what this gave him was this theory: if you're getting enough protein, or so we think we're supposed to have all this protein, getting more cancer? Was that what was happening? So this gave Dr. Colin Campbell a principle: nutrient intakes beyond optimum ranges create adverse effects. So if you're going beyond that 5% and you're up at the 20%, this could lead to adverse effects. Okay, I want to make sure the slide is going to change on your end. So the experimental protein is casein. It's the main protein in cow's milk. And this was the protein that he used in this research. And so it, wasn't some off the wall weird protein. It was what everybody's consuming when they're drinking milk. So this is a very popular protein that most people are getting unless they have a dairy-free diet. When he checked with soy and wheat using those proteins, there was no increase in precancer development, even at 20% of diet calories. So what he found was that casein is the most relevant chemical carcinogen ever identified. And it does increase IGF, which is it's a component in the body that does promote cancer tumor growth, which is not what any of us ever want to do, correct? So this is another principle that he developed based on this research. Nutrients from animal-based foods can be quite problematic, especially if you're going over that particular percentage mark. Nutrients from plant-based foods can be very advantageous because they do not promote the cancer in the body. So let's get into the calcium and the fracture rates, okay, dairy and disease. This study tracked over 6,700 adolescents and their fracture rates. The active children who consumed the largest quantity of milk actually had more bone fractures than those who consumed less. In other words, milk doesn't actually build strong bones. And I do want to tell you this, PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, did sue the Dairy Council. He did sue, they did sue because remember all of those billboards up there, milk, got strong bones, right? And he sued them because there was no evidence that milk built strong bones and protected people. And so that was false advertising. And he won the lawsuit, and all of those billboards had to be taken down. However, it was never published in the media that he won the lawsuit and that was false advertising. So interesting how that works, right? One way, but not the other. Here's another study. Young women published in the journals Bone and Pediatrics. Bone density was improved by physical activity, and increased calcium intake made no difference. And we're talking here about dairy, okay? It made no difference. But physical activity, yes, it made a difference. Here's the Harvard Nurses Health Study. Now this followed, 75,000 women for almost 20 years, and they looked at a whole bunch of stuff in this study. This was not the only thing they looked at, but they saw no protective effect of increased milk consumption on fracture risk. Those women who consumed the most milk were as likely to suffer a hip fracture as those who avoided milk. They did not see a difference. The milk did not protect them from fracture risk. So I want to show you this little slide here because this sort of gives you a visual, all right? See on the left, it says urine calcium in milligrams per deciliter. What they're doing is they're measuring how much calcium is in the urine that's excreted from the body based on diet. And when you've got your usual diet here, you can see that kind of light aqua color that's above that purple horizontal bar, that goes above 300, right? But you can see the one on the right, plant protein, for just 1 week, it's now gone below. So what this means is, simply speaking, the people on the usual diet are losing more calcium in their urine than they're taking in with their diet. On the right, this person is not losing more calcium than they're taking in, so they are not going to have harm in their body. They're not going to be depleted in their calcium stores. So how well is the calcium absorbed? A lot of people say that dairy really is the best source of calcium, right? Because it's so high in calcium. Well, it doesn't really matter how much of something a food has. It matters how much your body will absorb it, okay? And so when you look at these foods, the absorbability percentage on the right, the calcium in Brussels sprouts, 64% absorbable. Mustard greens, 58% absorbable. Broccoli, 53%. Turnip greens, 52%. Kale, 40 to 59. It depends. There's a lot of different types of kale. Fortified orange juice, that's calcium fortified orange juice, which of course is, supplemental, 36 to 38%. Milk, only 32%. So milk is not the most absorbable food when it comes to calcium. So why are we thinking that's the case? We've been misled. We've been misinformed. Here's another study. Saturated fat is a leading cause of chronic degenerative disease. And I'm sorry, this isn't a specific study. This is a fact. Dairy products are the biggest source of saturated fat in our diet. Unless you consume a non-dairy diet, you are consuming a great deal of fat by consuming dairy products. Your typical cheese is about 70% fat, mostly saturated. And I know many of you might think, oh, but I buy the low-fat cheese. There's no such thing as low-fat cheese. How the labeling laws are run is that it only has to have less fat than its normal counterpart to be labeled low-fat. So it could be 55% fat and be labeled low-fat. Anything that's more than half fat is not low-fat, I hate to tell you. So you've got to really pay attention. Look at how many grams of fat are in a serving and multiply that by 9, because there's 9 calories per gram of fat. And then you know how many calories of fat, and then figure out if there's 100 calories, 70 calories are from fat. You're now consuming something that's 70% fat. Okay, so I know that sounds like a lot of math to have to do. They used to have it on the labels where it would tell you the percentage of fat in the food, but they've decided to remove that now because we all know Americans, or the world, has no trouble with being overweight anymore. So why would we want to pay attention to the fat percentage of our foods? I know I might sound a little sarcastic, but I get very frustrated when the people in power of informing the public are misinforming the public or hiding information from them that they need to have. I get very angry at that. Too many people are harmed, and that makes me angry. So, and I won't apologize for that. Okay, skimming the fat from milk leaves a drink loaded with sugar. Lactose sugar is more than 55% of skim milk's calories. So basically, if you're drinking skim milk, you might as well have a soda. It's loaded with sugar. It is not going to be a health food for you. Here's one. Cow's milk consumption by infants and toddlers has been linked to type 1 diabetes and anemia. As kids reach their teen years, a lot of them will start to develop that lactose intolerance, right? They'll get cramps, they'll get diarrhea, they'll have all those problems. And this is especially true for specific ethnic groups, more so than others. Here's a study in 1992. Researchers from Finland drew blood samples from type 1 diabetic children between the ages of 4 and 12, and this is what they found. Now, these were all kids who had type 1 diabetes. They all had antibodies against the cow's milk protein. It's called bovine serum albumin. 100% of these type 1 diabetic kids had these elevated levels. This means that their body had developed this fight, this immune response to the cow's milk protein. Now, unfortunately, that also has a molecular mimicry to the cells that create insulin in the body, which are in the pancreas. And so now we're looking at this relationship between, maybe this has something to do with how and why they became type 1 diabetic. Now, this has not been confirmed, but this is what great deal research is showing, that there is a link, okay? Now, in the same study of the nearly 80 normal children, these are kids who did not have type 1 diabetes, not one of them had those antibodies, not one of them. So obviously, every child who drinks milk does not develop type 1 diabetes. I'm certainly not saying that, but those who may be more, have this predisposition for it, may not be a good idea. And if milk is not really protecting us and is not a great source of calcium, why are we consuming it anyway? It's really meant for the baby cows, not for humans. And many studies have since corroborated this finding, right? Many studies. Here's another one, British Medical Journal. People who consume the highest amounts of calcium did not have a reduction in bone fractures or osteoporosis. It's not protecting our bones. In fact, those who consume the most calcium, and this is per dairy, had higher rates of hip fractures and similar rates of osteoporosis compared with those who consumed less. It's not protecting us. Researchers who looked at over 61,000 Swedish women for almost 20 years concluded no significant benefit to consuming more than 700 milligrams of calcium per day for bone health. And again, this was milk consumption. Here's a 94 study, elderly men and women in Sydney, Australia. The higher dairy product consumption increased fracture risk. And this had to do with that, aqua and purple bars that I showed you. You're consuming way too much of a high acid food, and your body needs to protect the pH of your blood. It has to be between 7.35 and 7.45 to maintain life. And therefore, when you have all of this high acid load occurring in your diet, your body will remove calcium from the bones to neutralize the pH. That's how you end up literally peeing your bones down the toilet, or I should say the strength of your bones. Those with the highest dairy product consumption had approximately double the risk of hip fracture compared with those with the lowest consumption. It also will affect us with our prostate cancer mortality rates. You can see this bar here. And this is non-fat milk, so it had nothing to do with the fat. And you can see all of these dots are going, the more milk consumption, the higher the death rate of prostate cancer. And many of you may have heard this, but prostate cancer doesn't normally kill people. What it normally does is it hangs out for a long time and they die from something else before that will get them. It doesn't have a real high mortality rate. However, it does when you're consuming the milk. The more you consume, the higher the rate. The same thing with breast cancer. You can see here all of these different countries, and I'll leave this here for a moment so you can see it. You can see down in the bottom here, down in the bottom left, these countries have much lower rates of breast cancer, and that's because they're consuming less milk. They're consuming less milk per day. You look up on the right, look at the USA. It's up on top of that red bar. You'll see a big arrow pointing up to Australia. Right next to that is USA. We consume a lot of milk in this country, and we have a much higher rate of breast cancer. And again, it's the dairy promotes the tumor growth because of the estrogen, okay? And it's the same with uterine cancer. It's the same. This bar may be different, but it's the same increase in risk. So let me show you this, animal protein and calcium loss. This is what happens, and this is what I just spoke briefly a moment ago. When you're consuming a great deal of animal proteins, because it's a very high acid load food, okay, your body has to take care of that excess protein somehow. Carbohydrates are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Protein has carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. And we have to do something with that excess nitrogen. And this is when you're going, over that 10% animal food mark, which I had talked about a couple of days ago. So that excess nitrogen has to do something. And it ends up where you've got these high levels of uric acid and sulfuric acid. And when that goes into the bloodstream, your body immediately releases calcium from the bones to buffer the acid. Now, you will end up, a lot of people end up with kidney stones. Those calcium deposits end up in the kidneys. But then that excess calcium from the bones gets eliminated from the body through the urine. So, as I said, that's where your bones are going, or I should say the density or strength of your bones. So dairy is not a health food. Dairy proteins are associated with all of these things that none of us ever want to have to deal with, right? And other than these things, it's a pretty great food. Of course, I say that sarcastically, tongue in cheek. We really were not meant to consume dairy at all. It is meant for babies, baby animals. We are meant to drink mother's milk and then be weaned at a certain age. And that is really the scoop on dairy. The foods that contain calcium, if you're worried about getting your calcium, look at all these foods. It is in so many foods, it's ridiculous. And you will get all that you need if you're eating a nice whole food, plant-based diet with varied foods, right? Here, this actually tells you how many grams of calcium, or I'm sorry, 100 grams of kale here will give you 205 milligrams of calcium. So all of these foods based on a certain amount. So 100 grams of tofu will give you 150 milligrams of calcium, and so on. So you can get all the calcium you need from your food, okay? And plant-based calcium is quite powerful. You know, you're going to get a lot of it. Now, you'll see here 100 calories of arugula will give you 1,300 milligrams of calcium. Now, I do want to caution you, 100 calories of arugula is a heck of a lot of arugula because there's very few calories in dark leafy greens, okay? I don't know that you could sit and eat 100 calories of it in one sitting. It would be kind of challenging. However, you can see they are loaded with calcium. You will get all the calcium you need if you're consuming a lot of nice dark leafy greens, all right? And you can see here 100 calories of milk doesn't really have all that much calcium. So it's not the best answer for your calcium source by any stretch of the imagination, especially from what you've just learned. Only humans living an affluent lifestyle have rampant osteoporosis, okay? All right, so if you know, and a lot of people say, oh, I can't live without my cheese. Well, it's actually an addiction. It produces mild opiates as it digests, which is what makes us very happy, okay? Any animal's milk has casein, which is the protein, and when it goes through the digestive process, it becomes a casomorphine. And what are casomorphines? Opiates. Casein is very concentrated in cheese, and it will release opiates into your body during digestion. Now, and one molecular chain of casomorphine is 1/10 as potent as morphine when it comes to pain relief, right? And it's believed that the opiates in the milk is what causes a calming effect for the nursing infant. This is mother's milk. However, look at this. Human milk has only 2.7 grams of casein per liter. Cow's milk has 26. And it's very concentrated in cheese. All right, that's why people say, I can't live without my cheese. I have to have my cheese. Dairy promotion programs, government and industry work with fast food chains. They make sure that cheese is prominently displayed in menu items. And I actually did a tip of the month in my monthly newsletter one month. No cheese, please. No matter what you order, you have to say no cheese, please. Even if it isn't written in the menu, you're going to get a side dish of a vegetable, it's going to be covered in cheese. Every single salad you order out there is covered in cheese. It is in everything. You've got to learn to say no cheese, please. These federally sanctioned programs are promoting cheese to consumers in huge amounts. Your average American eats over 33 pounds of cheese per person per year. Now, there's somebody out there eating 66 pounds because I'm not eating my 33, right? So it's kind of scary because you've got a lot of people who are non-dairy now. So, oh my goodness, how much are these people actually eating? And since cheese contains 10 times the saturated fat as animal flesh, foods high in saturated fat are associated with high cancer rates and lots of other diseases. Dr. Jill Furman names it as one of the 7 worst foods for health and longevity. It is just not what we want to be putting into our bodies, right? Food addiction diagnosis versus BMI. If you have addictions to foods, the more addictions you have to foods, the higher the BMI in the person. This is what is being seen. And so it's hard, it's challenging. Fighting a food addiction is not an easy thing. People need help. They need to reach out to expert guidance to get through this. This is a beautiful book I highly recommend, Breaking the Food Seduction. It talks about the hidden reasons behind food cravings and 7 steps to end them naturally. Very well written book. And of course, you can live without cheese. Yes, you can, believe it or not. Okay? What happens is you have this beautiful, normal pleasure zone when you're eating whole foods. When you consume junk foods, it goes up to enhanced. And I apologize, I have to fix this slide because enhanced should be up here. So this is an enhanced pleasure zone. You build this tolerance, so now you're going to have to eat more junk foods to get back up to that enhanced. But if you just deal with it, you'll go down. This is during when you abstain from these foods, you will recover consuming whole foods and you'll be back into a normal pleasure zone. You won't be having that up, down, up, down, up, down kind of a response, right? So here's some simple strategies for you. Just don't have the junk food in the house. If it's not in the house, you're not going to eat it, right? Plan your weekly menu, plan ahead. Don't be caught off guard. Don't be caught with, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to eat. Let me get some junk food because it's quick and easy and it'll satisfy me, right? Cook in quantities so that you're cooking less. I did the one thing, the monthly tip was cook one day and eat all week, right? You can make 2 or 3 recipes on Sunday or Saturday, whatever day is convenient, and you're eating the rest of the week without any problem whatsoever. Make sure you've got some healthy snacks in your car. If you spend time in your car, hire help. Give somebody your recipes and say, please make these for me if you're too busy, right? Thousands of different symptoms and diseases may have just one common cause: poor nutrition. We want to give everything a diagnosis. We want to give everything a definitive reason and cause, when more than likely it's not putting the right foods in our mouth and putting the wrong foods in our mouth, right? It is easier to change a man's religion than to change his diet. This is what Margaret Mead said. Remember, a couple days ago, we talked about people said it was easier to do their taxes than to figure out how to eat healthy. It's gotten very complicated, right? So I'm going to teach you in the next couple of minutes, and then we're going to listen to our speaker. We got delayed here because we had some tech issues. There is a right diet for humans, plant-based. 90% of your calories from whole grains, legumes, fruits, and veggies. 10% or less from animal foods. That is what the data supports. However, that's optional. You do not need to be consuming them. No dairy, whole foods, low fat. We want to eliminate the oils. We went into that in detail a couple days ago. If you're consuming lots of whole foods, you're getting plenty of fiber. Water does need to be your first choice beverage. And we need to learn to differentiate food versus a treat. So let's look at this as basic food guidance. We've got just a small handful of slides here. This will help you, and you can review this anytime you need. It will be under the announcements tab. It's the whole diet. The importance of the overall diet cannot be overemphasized. We want proper foods to keep the intestinal barrier strong. We don't want a leaky gut. And we want our immune system to be effective. Our immune system thrives in our digestive tract. That is where it gets its calories. That's where it gets its nutrition. We want whole starches, right? Not potato chips, but baked potatoes. We want whole starches, whole brown rice. We want vegetables and fruits. In addition to being limited or free of animal products, the diet must be low in fat of all kinds, because that does not promote health in our body, especially if we're trying to achieve optimal weight. We want to be eliminating dairy. You just learned why. And those added oils, you learned that a couple of days ago. And we want to be consuming at least 64 ounces of water. That's non-negotiable every single day. So what does this mean you can eat? A lot of people say, what am I going to eat? Whole grains, brown rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, whole grain pastas, root vegetables, winter squashes. And I say winter squashes because summer squashes are not going to give you enough calorie density. You'll be chewing off your arm. You'll be starving all the time. If you're consuming these foods as the main portion of your plate, legumes, beans, lentils, peas, adding vegetables and some fruits, you are not going to go hungry. You don't have to count your calories, and you don't have to portion control. Pantry stocking, what to buy. And again, you can review this. These staples will allow you to make quick and easy meals to keep you on track with your health goals. And I'm not going to read this to you. You have access to this. You can review this. You can pause the recording and write it all down if you want, but this is all you need, right? Here's some more. These will help you. Now be careful, the nuts are high in fat. If your goal is to achieve optimal weight, you want to stay away from the high fat foods like nut butters and nuts. You do want oil-free hummus, right? Crackers tend to be high fat. You can find low fat crackers out there. Mustard is always fat-free, but don't think Dijonnaise is, because that's mustard and mayonnaise, right? You want oil-free salad dressings. Maple Grove Farms makes some good ones. You can make your own. I've got tons of recipes for oil-free salad dressings, and they are all delicious. Many of you will help each other on here because many of you are already savvy with what I'm teaching here, and you'll help each other. Meal planning, what to make, simple as anything, right? Remember, we talked about this. People say it's easier to do your taxes than how to eat healthy. It doesn't have to be. Keep it simple. We tend to eat the same things very often. Pick 2 to 3 recipes to start. Most of us eat the same recipes over and over and over anyway. Make meals that you like within the guidelines. A simple meal can be extremely satisfying, right? A couple of baked potatoes, some vegetables that you love, a side salad, and you're good to go. Right? It doesn't have to be complicated. And what you can put on your baked potato, put soup. I like to put soup on my baked potatoes. Vegetarian chili on a baked potato is an incredible meal. So you can be creative. Pick a starch and build around it. Everybody can have the same thing. So if somebody else in your household doesn't want to lessen their meat intake, you can make a big batch of barbecued rice and beans. That's everybody's main thing. And then have them have their chicken breast, their hamburger, their pork chop, their steak, whatever it is they feel they can't live without. So you're not all fighting, okay? But you're not making different meals for everybody. And remember what I said, it's easier to change a man's religion than to change his diet. Well, this is Margaret Mead said. So don't try to change somebody's diet, just help them, right? And then this recommended resources, I'm going to provide a document on the Facebook group for you that has recommended recipe books, DVDs, websites. Here's just a brief. If you just go to this one, drmcdougall.com, there's over 2,000 recipes on here. So, and they're all free. Now, he does have some great books. My favorite one is his Quick and Easy, John McDougall's Quick and Easy cookbook. That's my favorite. I've never disliked anything I've made out of that book. But know that there's so many free resources for you. It's ridiculous. So there's no reason that you can't succeed at this, right? And so the action steps, if you follow along, I have the Nourish Your Body for Lifelong Well-Being whole, it's an 8-video series with 10 hours of teaching. This is just part of it. This is, if you watch a video a week, these are kind of action steps to guide you. So this can kind of give you a starting point if you don't know how to eat this way. Make sure you add a salad with your dinner. Make half your meal healthy, starches and grains, and the rest veggies. Replace the junk food snacks with real food. Don't be eating snacks, be eating food. Replace sodas and juices with water. Filter it if you live in the city and it's got lots of things in it that are meant to bleach, basically. You don't want your water to smell like that, right? Keep healthy options and water handy to promote success. Evaluate your eating habits over the course of the week and make the changes based on what you learned in this class. Okay? Only you can change your life. No one can do it for you.